telling of history is and has never been neutral. And this quote is by Judith Binney from Maori Oral Narratives. This quote is, it really tells the story of history and how perspectives and, well, narrations of the same story can be told in many different forms, and in many ways, many cases, it's in the perspective of the narrator. So the example of the Maori people, they were colonized, and they have oral narrations of what happened, and there are, of course, the mainstream narrations. And this all has to do with perspectives. Alright, so the title of this presentation is The Erosion of Identity by Abdullah Hakim Chowdhury. And this is a very important issue, actually, and it's surfaced centuries ago from all the way back until colonization. And today's presentation isn't exactly about historical colonization and its impact on cultural identity, but rather modern colonization and in the form of the digital media and overall globalization. So my research question is, how is cultural identity impacted by rapid globalization that is fueled by increased digital reliance? So as it sounds, I'm dissecting how cultural identity is impacted in the modern era. And globalization has played a massive role, especially in really building something called a universal culture, and that is putting at risk many marginalized communities and small cultures. And this is, of course, fueled by digital reliance, which is digital media and all of that. So my argument, well, not just my argument, but my conclusion and the results of this is that cultural identity is, in fact, negatively impacted by globalization and digital reliance, primarily because of the increase of just social media use. And there are many, actually, very shocking pieces of information and facts that I will tell you in the next slide. Yes. So the evidence. The spread of digital platforms dominated by Western narratives risk eroding indigenous cultural identities, replacing them with more universalized but less diverse cultural ethos. So this is incredibly interesting, particularly the second part of the universalized culture, and that is created by the dominant West, and this has been proven throughout history from colonization and even current day, like social media. It's essentially, the United States is actually a hub, and it's the central of the world almost, especially with social media. And a very interesting study, case study done in Indonesia found that 40% of rural communities that were introduced to social media, they found high levels of cultural identity changes after a period of time. And these are for rural communities. And to think that migrants, like second or third generation migrants, could be facing even higher levels of cultural changes and even an identity crisis in many cases. So the counter-argument and just the limitations of this is that it would be unjust for me to say that globalization and digital reliance is only negative for cultural identity, but it's actually been proven the opposite as well in many cases. So digital platforms allow marginalized communities to share their narratives and traditions with a global audience. So what's interesting about this is these platforms, such as, or social media in general, they allow marginalized communities to involve and engage with the greater community of the globe. And this is really up to them. So they need to really leverage social media and digital platforms to really get their culture out there and make an impact, I suppose. And this challenges traditional gatekeeping and also challenges oral and yeah, with that I conclude.
do have two questions for you. First question, what evidence did you what evidence did you gather that you didn't use, and then why did you not use it?
Well, I got a lot of repetitive information, like probably stating that it was just negative, and that's why I actually used the 40%, like that fact that 40% of, that's why I used that one, because that was different, I suppose, and also the universal culture. I chose those two specifically because they gave a broader outlook.
Okay, and then what advice would you have for other researchers that talk about this topic in the future?
I would say to have an objective view before you even start looking, because if you come in with a negative perspective or pessimistic perspective, you're just going to be sucked into that side of the story, but there are obviously two sides to every coin.